All right, we will get started with the public hearing. So I am calling the 6 p.m. public hearing, September 28th, to order. Good evening, I am Mayor Cantor, and I would like to welcome you to tonight's public hearing on the application filed on behalf of Floor Decor, a prospective tenant of the property located at 245 Prospect Avenue, also known as Prospect Plaza, located within Special Development District Number 11. Before we begin, I'd like to note that the required legal notice was posted on the town's website and published in the Hartford Current. The application materials have been posted and are available for review on the town's website. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Blanks?
Here.
Ms. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Davidoff?
Here.
Ms. Fay?
Here.
Mr. Gold?
Here.
Ms. Kerrigan is absent, but we have an alternate, Mr. Dembo?
Present.
Mr. Sweeney? Here. Mr. Winograd?
Here.
And Mr. Williams?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, and I'll start with a brief overview of the process. We will begin with a presentation from the applicant. Following the presentation, we will open the floor to members of the public. After the public comment is over, the applicant will have 5 minutes to address any issues raised during the public comment. Members of the council will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, and we'll call on members of the council probably in alphabetical order. Also, I will ask participants not to address one another directly, but I think we don't need to do this through the chair anymore if we're in person. Then we will start with a presentation from the applicant. Make sure you just state your name and...
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jeff Board. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Bowler Engineering, located at 65 LaSalle Road in West Hartford, Connecticut. Here on behalf of Floor Decor, with me tonight, you'll be hearing from a little later, Jeff Seeley is with Floor Decor representing them. What you're looking at here is just a colorized version of our site plan that was submitted as part of our application package. And just to orient you, north is to the top of the page, and the site is bordered to the east by Prospect Avenue, and then to the south by Kane Street. To date, we have attended several meetings. The process here in town has been great as far as going to the committee meetings up front. So we've attended 2 design review committee meetings where we received positive feedback and incorporated a few other comments into tonight's plan. So we're happy to say that we have a positive referral from them. It was accepted at Planning and Zoning, and then it was accepted at CROG as well, and it had the referral from there. Right now, currently on site, and I'm sure you're all familiar with this site, it belongs to a much larger plaza, Prospect Plaza, and this was the old Shop Rite, which is currently vacant at the time being. There's a lot of, issues on site with regards to ADA access. The ADA spaces in front of the building are, 1, there's not enough of them. 2, they're not compliant with regards to signage, grading, etc. There's a few safety issues on site with regards to the retaining wall along the eastern portion of Prospect Avenue. There's currently no fence for fall protection on top, which should be installed, and we're looking to do so as part of this application to correct the, original. There must have been one there a long time ago that's just no longer in place. So that's part of our current application. It's also going to largely utilize the existing Shop Rite building with some facade improvements, and Jeff will go through some of the architectural plans in a bit. The only area that we're really touching is this southeast corner here. Let me look on my screen. And so the shell of the building's staying largely the same, except in this area right here, they're putting in what they call a CPU, or a customer pickup area. So for larger orders, you can back your car up into that area, and they'll have a forklift come out to be able to load the cars. So that's really the only change to the building other than the front south-facing facade and then the eastern facade along Prospect Avenue. The building's 71,285 square feet. There's currently 181 parking spaces in that front field. We, at the recommendation of the Design Review Committee, and again, regarding the ADA stalls themselves, we added 2 additional ADA stalls and relocated them from basically, they were located right here where I'm circling, and then right here where they were currently there. And there was only 6 of them. Now we're proposing 8, and we're centering them on the front face of the building itself. The other piece that came up during DRAC was the inclusion of these 3 landscaped islands. So it's not often I get to come up here and say that we're reducing impervious, and there's a lot of benefits, but this is a case where we're actually reducing impervious coverage throughout the site here. And at DRAC's request, we have added a bunch of additional screening to the eastern facade here to supplement the already existing landscaping on top of that retaining wall. And then again, with the architectural facade there, I think you'll find that's a vast improvement over what's out there today. Let's see here. The fencing we talked about for the fall protection. One of the other benefits is that we're updating the lighting for this particular area. And I know that the future plans for this shopping center, this is basically the catalyst for them to relook at this property as a whole and ultimately be able to kind of update it and refresh it a bit from what it currently is. And what we did here was included IES dark sky compliant LED fixtures in the parking lot. They did have a standard that had much higher foot candle levels that through DRAC, we've brought them down to be more consistent with retail or retail shopping center per comments received. So that was also addressed. And then again, we touched on the ADA improvements. And then the only other site change that we're making, because largely when we do these, they take over existing buildings and we try to utilize as much of it as we can. In the back area, the pavement was in disrepair, so they are going to redo this loading dock. If anyone has ever driven this piece, there's quite the grade change from, as you're coming up this hill here, and then it goes back down to the loading dock. So you can't see a lot of this back area from the road anyways. And one of the big things we wanted to do was respect this curb line from an inland wetland standpoint, just given the constraints on the side here. So largely the back area is remaining the same with the exception of new asphalt, and then some new railings and stairs over near the compactor here. That's really it from a site standpoint. There's no drainage improvements, there's no utility improvements. It's largely just site enhancements to bring it to life again and to kind of bring it into compliance with what was out there. And with that, I can turn it over to Jeff just to touch base on the architecture, because I think you'll find that the colored renderings we put together with DRAC's comments are a vast improvement over what's out there right now.
Thank you. And it's just voice activated. You don't have to press anything.
Well, Jeff did a lot of the heavy lifting here, but with the work in the parking lot and the landscaping and certainly the lighting, what we did with the building from an architectural standpoint or aesthetic standpoint was down in the lower elevation there. We redid the storefront entry. So we have a grand entry. We have two what we're calling towers that are on either side of the entrance to the store that kind of guides you into it. And we painted. We used the most common colors for our brand on the project, and it's pretty simple and pretty similar in any location that you would see for any of our stores. Around on the east elevation, which is actually the second one down, this is a big, long, massive elevation that everyone was a little bit concerned about. So what we ended up doing there is, well, besides having the fence there and some landscaping, we also brought some color up on vertical. You can see there's different vertical elements in the building. On the exterior, at one point in time, they were all painted the same color as the top of the building. We ended up bringing the color up, so we kind of broke up that long, massive wall, for lack of a better way of putting it, and we think that was a big improvement. Our sign got a little bit smaller there. Our storefront sign, we brought it down a little bit. We think it's more proportional to the building. And basically, with the exception of rebuilding part of the storefront, the rest of the building we've handled basically just by painting it with typical colors that we use in our brand. Am I forgetting anything, Jeff? Or, I mean, it was pretty basic.
On the two elevations that he's talking about that really don't have any color to them is basically this top one here and then the third one down. This third one down is in the loading dock area, which is screened by heavy woods in the back. And I can actually go back to the site plan. So basically, there's a massive span of woods that goes back here. So this is not visible, and then this whole side is screened as well with existing forest on this side. So the areas that Jeff just described are this, I guess, southern face and eastern face of the building, which have the most prominence up to the street front.
Okay.
That's largely it, and happy to answer any questions or go
Thank
to the
you.
public.
Thank you very much. We'll look and see if anyone signed up from the public to speak.
One thing I think I should get on record, we did hold a community outreach meeting. That was part of our requirements as we submitted the process. So we held that on Friday, which was a Zoom meeting, and stayed on for about an hour and 15 minutes, and nobody had come on. So that notice went out to all the abutters, including the condo association far to the west. So that was just something I wanted to get on record as well.
Thank you, Mr. Board. Ms. LeBreau, we did not have any written comments on this, right? Correct. All right, so there were no written comments to the town clerk. There's nobody signed up to speak on the sign-up sheet. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to, I know everybody in the audience, so I don't think so. Yeah, okay, so we will go to my colleagues on the council. I don't think we need to go in alphabetical order, but we will, if there's a swell of questions, we can, but I don't think so. Sure. So we will go with Mr. Gold.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just maybe you could comment a little bit more on the fence line that you plan to put up on the east wall.
Yeah, so basically there's a retaining wall, and if you could see the hand, that goes from about right here, and then it goes the entire span of this location here. So I think...
Yeah, no, I look at it daily because my
gotcha.
building's across the street.
I don't need to tell you then.
Yeah, so I guess my question, are you going to enclose that whole area? Because I know people do walk that length on the side of the building as opposed to the sidewalk.
So basically there's a stairway that comes up right here. So we're tying it into the railing that's on the top of the stairs along the wall and then back up to the railing that's associated with these stairs. So there's no way to get over to the top of that wall.
Okay.
So we're basically closing it off just from a safety standpoint.
Yes, that's what, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Ms. Blanks.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Like Councilor Gold, I live in that area as well. And so actually, I never really noticed the little back driveway. And I'm going to assume that that's where your delivery is going to occur.
Correct.
Right? And then the front part of that, where you said that's going to be the pickup for the customer pickup, is that correct?
Correct. That's
Can
more
you
of
just
a...
elaborate a little more on that for me?
Yeah, so that's just your regular pickup truck, like a Ford F-150 or a small truck, not box trucks, more personal vehicles where you could back your car up, pop your trunk, and they'll deliver whatever goods or tiles or services out that customer pickup area. So it's designed in such a way that there's, I want to say it's a 14-foot clear off the building or the canopy that's right here. Basically, it's just a chunk of this is carved out on the first floor. And then they're able to navigate a forklift around and then just assist you in loading your car. And typically they do that out of the way, which in this instance, it actually worked out really well that the way the Shop Rite building was laid out here. And then the loading in the back was just for the deliveries. Correct.
Thank you, Ms. Blanks. Mr. Winograd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on the Prospect Avenue, the line, I'm looking on a photo on Google Maps.
Yep.
So there's a side entrance right there near the front. Will that still be there? Look at the top of those stairs on the far...
Right, is it this picture right here?
The far left corner. Like
Oh, right over here? I think all the doors are remaining the same on the
Okay.
building. So the only one they're adding is that customer pickup area will be the only door. And then I believe there was a door, which is largely a non-issue for you guys, but there's a door right back here that was going away that was like 24 inches wide or 20,
Okay.
It wasn't to code. So there was one door back there being modified. Other than that, the doors on the east and western facade are staying the same.
All right. And just the retaining wall itself, will you be doing any work on that? I noticed it's in pretty bad shape, sort of at the larger end.
We were not proposing any. I know we are working separately with the landlord himself. Other than the fall protection was the most important thing. We did recognize, and during DRAC it came up that, there was paint on there, and I know there was one of these images showed it pretty well. Let me see. But the wall's in good shape. We actually walked the site several times, and with our office so close, we were out there a lot with the contractor. The wall's in really good shape other than the spottiness. And again, this image could be from a couple of years ago, but I'm sure a fresh coat of paint could go on that to help it. But structurally, it's sound, and with that fence on top, it'll be safe. So those are the most critical pieces for us.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winograd. Any other questions? Oh, Mr. David.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to go through a few of the concerns that were in the staff letter, staff commentary.
Sure.
Why don't we start with, can you illustrate on the site map where the bicycle racks are for this parcel?
So during the Shop Rite, and I don't think I have a photo of it, I could double check, but there is an existing bike rack in the concrete up here in the sidewalk to remain. And it's your typical bike rack that we would normally spec out if we were doing a proposed bike rack. So in our response to comment, that's how we addressed it, where we just pointed out where that was located on the revised site plans that went back in.
Okay. You indicated that you had a Zoom webinar.
Correct.
With the neighborhood.
Correct.
I didn't see any report in the file.
Yeah, so part of the SDD requires, or I don't even know if it's a requirement more so than it's a recommendation to the applicants to go forward and put something together. So we basically hosted a webinar where we sent out all the adjacent properties, that Zoom link with a description of the project, gave them the link of where the project could be viewed on the town website, and then we just waited there and nobody came. So that's what we reported back to in our response to comment letter. That's basically what it stated.
So there was no interest.
No interest in it, and that I was surprised because it did go to the condo association to the west of the development, which went to a lot of folks.
Right, and no commentary from the developer for the Sisters of St. Joseph property?
No.
Okay. Just want to get this on the record. So. And then the last thing there was a request from the health department with respect to a rodent study, because the previous use had been food, and they were concerned with the disturbance as to whether or not that would generate.
And I think the applicant has agreed to have a pest control company come out and just do an inspection prior to any construction beginning. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
your answers.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davidoff. That was a great question and was one of mine. So thank you. Oh, that's good. Is there any energy improvements that are going to happen on this, besides the lighting in the parking lot you had said was going to be, I thought LED,
Yeah.
you said LED.
Correct. So the bike rack and the lighting would typically be the exterior. I don't know, Jeff, internally, if anything's considered, typically with the shell buildings, there's only so much they could do. I know they are putting on or redoing pieces of the roof, and then they're redoing a lot of the interior fit out. I'm assuming that some of the fixtures will be, the high efficiency fixtures or toilets or, stuff like that. But I don't know, Jeff, if you have anything to add.
You have to come up to the microphone. Thank you for the record. Thank you.
We also have an energy management system that controls all the lights and the air conditioning, the heating. So that's part of our entire energy management package. So every store gets one of those. So the lights are all high efficiency. It controls the mechanical systems for peak hours of the day and whatnot. So we do have an energy management system that controls the whole building.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. And what about snow removal from the reduction in the lot, in the parking with the green spaces, I don't like the little islands or whatever, can make it a little more difficult. But how's that work for you?
So the inclusion of the islands, the one benefit here is that there's actually a clear space between these two islands. So from a snow removal contractor, he still has a lot of room to work with here. There's a lot of areas where they're not that fortunate, and then when they're not, and it's a tighter site where this is not, they'll go in and pull snow out to be able to push it into the location it needs to go. in the event of heavy snow. This lot's big enough, and in talking to DLC, the way they manage the entire facility, a lot of the parking spaces in this facility are highly unutilized. So there are other areas that aren't even shown here in the bigger grand scheme of things in the event of a larger snowstorm that they can be stored there, ultimately making their way into the stormwater basin and treated, so.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And is this, the number of spaces for this size store, is that a lot for you compared to other stores, or is that pretty?
It's probably on par, and what's not shown here, just off the page, there's other spaces down here in the corner as well, and then the rest of the shopping center, I want to say there's about 660 spaces for the entirety of the shopping
Right.
center, all of which are fairly underutilized at the moment. But this is typical of what Floor Decor is looking, and they're working out their lease agreement right now with the developer as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's all I had. Any other questions from the council? Mr. David?
I'm sorry, two more questions came. Is there a carriage return for shopping carts for those who aren't picking up with a truck?
I'm not sure, but I don't believe we do have one on the outside of the building.
So can you explain how that's going to work?
Well, the corrals, I believe what happens is it's inside the vestibule or right inside the vestibule where the carriages are kept. Now, I'm not sure how operation functions, is how frequently they go out to the parking lot and they get the different carriages and put them in. I mean, but we certainly have operations. I could get a report from operations saying how they work that. I really am not sure how they do that.
Because when an individual leaves their carriage behind, it just makes it one less space to
Yeah.
park in, because you
Yeah.
just say, well, I'm not parking in that space, it's occupied. So if we could get some answers, that would.
We could get that.
And
could
then
get that.
I just had one other question. Since there's a very large footprint on that roof of that building, was there any consideration given to installation of solar panels? Or discussion with our conservation, energy conservation committee to explore that?
I don't believe so, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the architect, but I don't believe that was discussed or agreed to during the DRAC process, and I don't think at this time they're entertaining solar on the roof.
So they may not be entertaining currently, but if the commission and our representative that works for the town reached out, we could sort of possibly have a discussion with respect to making the building more green.
I'm sure a discussion could be had, and certainly we would entertain whatever thoughts or recommendations you may have. I don't believe we have any buildings that are actually solar at this point in time, and I'm not sure what certainly, I mean, we're always open to have a discussion and entertain thoughts.
And one last question. Was there any discussion during the entire process about electric vehicle charging in that parking lot at all?
I don't believe that came up during our meetings to date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Okay, Mr. Dembo.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question with regard to the customer pickup in the front area to the left. That's the whitish gray area, correct?
Correct.
What's the distance, if we're gonna have cars parking right where your cursor is, and then trucks, pickup trucks, you said, or other vehicles coming in there, is there a concern, and maybe there isn't, I just don't know, with a forklift operating so close to people exiting their vehicles and coming around and entering the store?
Yeah, I should have explained that a little better. So this lighter tan color in here
Yes, sir.
is under the building, and that's where the forklifts operate. The cars back in right up to kind of underneath the building here. So these 3 stalls basically act as parking spaces. So no one's ever really out within the parking field or, having any issues in this standpoint. And then there is a wide enough berth here to this space. And we actually, when we relocated some of the handicap stalls, we had tweaked this a bit. So we had run vehicular templates through here, and there's no conflicts from a vehicle standpoint.
So the asphalt is butting up against what I'll call the white area, which you're saying are...
Which is this white area is concrete,
Concrete.
and then the light tan is concrete, but underneath the existing building.
And it's the same level as the asphalt parking, the concrete?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Demo. Okay, is that it from the council? All right, then I will, before we close the hearing, I'd like to read into the record a TPZ dated September 17, 2021, recommending approval. DRAC dated September 17, 2021, recommending approval. And from CROG dated August 27, 2021, finding no apparent conflict with regional plans or policies or the concerns of neighboring towns. If there's no objection, we will close the public hearing. Is there any objection? Okay, the hearing is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and we have 2 minutes before the next.
Oh, I can use this.
All right, kids.
If someone's that disinterested, I don't want them anyway. Yeah, true. You're right.
Same answer.
Okay. Okay. All right. We will call, I'm calling the September 28th, 6:30 public hearing to order. Good evening. I am Mayor Sherry Cantor. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's public hearing on an ordinance allowing restaurant drive-through facilities in certain commercial districts. Before we begin, I'd like to note that the required legal notice was posted on the town's website and published in the Hartford Current. The ordinance and accompanying materials have been posted and are available on the town website. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Blanks?
Here.
Ms. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Davidoff?
Here.
Ms. Fay?
Present.
Mr. Gold?
Here.
Ms. Kerrigan is absent. Mr. Sweeney? Here. Mr. Winograd? Here. And Mr. Williams?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's see, we will start with a presentation by town staff, and then we will go to public comment. And we are still in a little bit of a hybrid on the comment piece. And then we will go back to town staff for any with council with any questions. So I will kick it over to Mr. Hart to start, and then we will go to Mr. Dumais.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. As the mayor said, I will lead off with a few opening remarks and then turn to our town planner, Todd Dumais, to supplement my comments. So the ordinance that we have in front of us today, it would amend our current zoning as it relates to drive-through facilities for restaurants. And more specifically, the ordinance would provide restaurant drive-through expansion opportunities in what we call our BG district, and Mr. Dumais will elaborate on the BG district and the definition thereof. And it includes some new zoning standards and location criteria. So we did discuss this concept with the Council's Community Planning and Development Committee back in May. We received a lot of positive input, and we developed the ordinance that's in front of the Council today. You received it, as you will recall, at your August 17th meeting, and you referred it out to various entities, including the Regional Planning Commission, which has reviewed the proposed ordinance and has found no conflicts with any regional plans or policies. So I will pause there, Mayor, and ask Mr. Dumais to supplement my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Dumais?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Todd Dumais, Town Planner for the record. I briefly want to touch upon a little bit about getting a consensus about what drive-through facilities are, talking about then how we regulate and where we allow them currently in town, and then from there talking about some of the general history and pros and cons of drive-through facilities as identified throughout the country. At their most basic, a drive-through facility could be defined as a facility or structure that is designed to provide a service directly to a motor vehicle where the customer does not have to exit the vehicle to complete a transaction. So I'm sure everyone's used a drive-through at least once in their lives, either through a bank, a pharmacy, or a restaurant. In West Hartford, we have three primary types of drive-through facilities. We have banks, we have pharmacies with drive-through windows, and we have restaurants. Each of those is regulated by zoning district, and parking standards govern some of their zoning regulations, principally queuing lengths. And I'll talk about each of those. Queuing lengths we refer to as waiting positions. So banks are our most numerous type of drive-through facility. We have banks that are permitted in virtually all of our commercial districts. So on the zoning map behind me, anything in red or maroon or pink, we basically allow bank drive-through facilities. Then we have restaurant drive-through facilities. We call them drive-up windows, and we are currently only allowing those in our IG and IR zones. So the purple zones generally in the southeastern section of the community. And we also allow drive-through facilities as an accessory use to pharmacies, and those are allowed only in the BG district. So that's this darker maroon color you see on the zoning map. In total, all of those categories of drive-through facilities, we have 22 such uses that are at least actively in use, 15 of which are banks, 2 pharmacies, and 5 restaurants. As a point of historical reference, we did not permit or adopt zoning provisions that allowed any drive-through facilities until 1991, and that was for the establishment of drive-through facilities in our 2 industrial districts for restaurants. And then in 2005, the zoning ordinances were amended to permit drive-through or a drive-up window for pharmacies to conduct that transaction. Generally, the concept, believe it or not, was introduced for restaurants going back into the 40s. You know, that was really kind of the first era of a drive-through restaurant. But it wasn't probably until the mid-1970s when McDonald's introduced the first drive-through concept that we would all know and recognize today as a true drive-through facility. And over the years, both the popularity and utilization of drive-throughs as a component of fast food businesses has increased in utilization. And pre-COVID accounted for approximately 70% of sales in drive-through restaurant fast food sales in America. Increasingly, and particularly since the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, additional chains, and we call them more broadly fast casual chains, such as Panera Bread, Chipotle, Starbucks, and Shake Shack, are focusing more of their business expansion and reinvestment models around the utilization of drive-throughs or the ability to utilize drive-throughs. That being said, drive-through facilities are often criticized for an embodiment of urban sprawl, being reliant upon automobile and associated with large suburban strip malls. As such, they're often characterized as not being supportive for mixed use or being bicycle or pedestrian friendly, and often are characterized for just having, in general, bad urban design. People also note there's some negative environmental associations with vehicles idling and linkages to obesity. On the flip side, fast food and casual food provide quick, convenient, and inexpensive options for consumers. Given their auto-oriented nature, they can meet the needs of a wider spectrum of the community, including people with mobility issues, parents with young children, people with medical issues, and both price and time-sensitive consumers. So if we're trying to marry those two, the pros and the cons, to address both the perceived and real negative externalities associated with drive-through facilities, and provide additional choice and access and benefits that they can provide, we can use zoning regulatory tools to better control a design typology that might not be a store prototype. So the ordinance we'll talk about this evening is really a form-based ordinance that tries to address the benefits of allowing drive-through as a use, but controlling some of the perceived negative effects, mainly around store designs. And I think we have two good examples of this in the community, both in the Chick-fil-A store model and then the TD Bank on North Main Street. Both of those facilities are on street-activated urban design where the building is placed close to the street. There's direct pedestrian connectivity and access that is not impeded by a drive-through facility itself. And it generally activates the storefront streetscape while providing a drive-through amenity on the inside of the parcel. So that being said, the ordinance before the council this evening was designed really as a form-based control. And it was designed to do two things. One, to impose a set of standards and controls in the drive-throughs where we currently have town for restaurants in the industrial districts. Right now, the only standard we have in those districts, other than they're either allowed in the IG or IR, is that they have to have a certain number of queuing or waiting positions in advance in proceeding and departing from the drive-through window. And then to allow the opportunity to expand our drive-throughs into the BG districts. So again, the BG districts are our most intense general business district, and they're generally auto-oriented in nature. If you look at the way that they've been deployed in town, Corbin's Corner down here, Bishop's Corner up here, both BG zones. We have a linear strip of BG along Park Road, and then some smaller pockets along Prospect Avenue, both north and south of Park Road. And then the next largest section of BG is generally New Britain Avenue from basically South Main Street over to the Hartford line. So to expand the opportunity into the BG zone, the ordinance does a couple of things. It establishes locational requirements, recognizing that perhaps all of those locations may not be appropriate for expansion of drive-through. It requires that a drive-through restaurant would have to be on a lot of greater than a half acre in size. It would have to have frontage on a arterial or interstate roadway, so it has to be one of our busier roadways. So think North, South Main Street, Albany Avenue, New Britain Avenue. They would require or impose setbacks from residential structures of at least 200 feet from the drive-through facility itself. It would require the building to be placed up within 10 feet of the building line. The building line in West Hartford is, our front yard setback. That's what we call it here. So again, try to push the building towards the street to help activate the street front. It requires in the ordinance a certain amount of fenestration. So those are windows and other things that activate the street front, allow pedestrians to walk off the sidewalk and go into the establishment. It requires a minimum width of at least 100 feet between two curb cuts, again, so that expands the width of the parcel that would be eligible. It requires the service or drive-through canopy window to be located to the rear of the building. It has landscaping requirements, and then it also imposes an hours of operation prohibition. So a drive-through restaurant could not be in operation between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. So that was my brief and high-level walkthrough, or I should say drive-through of the ordinance. And I do want to drill down on one issue that came up. Pass out the map here. What I'm passing out for the council to look at is when you take the net effect of all those location criteria in the BG zone and see, what is the real opportunity for possible drive-through. The map that I'm passing out shows two areas. Once everyone has a chance to look at that, I'll highlight those on the map up here. So the first area on the map I just provided is Park Road. So here, and then a couple of properties on Prospect, and then just for reference, Prospect Plaza, the application that we just heard before this, down here. So if you take the location requirements that are outlined in the ordinance, and you apply those using a GIS analysis, it'll come down. Park Road is an example. We're only left with 6 eligible properties on that whole stretch of Park Road that might be eligible. But then if I impose a 200-foot buffer from residential, Park Road kind of comes out of the playbook, so it would not be able to accommodate a drive-through facility. Similarly, if you look on the back, New Britain Avenue is an example of a district where you might be able to achieve some drive-through expansion. There are larger parcels, generally speaking, and there's a lack of residential abutters. So when you take all that and you look at the areas that might be open for additional drive-through development, it really does focus back on Bishop's Corner, Corbin's Corner, and some of our larger parcels. Most of those, if we look on this map, are also encumbered with special development districts. So there is an added layer of regulatory control if someone wanted to infill a development there. So I think I don't want to leave the council with that this could be a tool for limited expansion of infill development in our more auto-oriented shopping plazas, but at the same time requiring an infill development that creates a more pedestrian-friendly streetscape environment with a good urban form in those areas that are generally used as parking lots today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dumais. I just want to first start by thanking Mr. Williams and Mr. Davidoff for this kind of came out of our recovery committees that as a result of COVID really reimagining our brick and mortar, right? And understanding the needs of a variety of people and thinking about, and I actually thought about, there was drive-through pharmacies were really, really important. Obviously, drive-through testing was being done out of some drive-through, and none of our drive-through pharmacy, those opportunities didn't exist for us because that was not how they were set up. So it showed that we were not as flexible in certain ways as maybe the times needed us to be. But again, I think it does, there is this balance and this protection. And one of the comments I know that came out of TPZ was and it was a split vote 2-2, was the protection of the walkability of West Hartford, and that is one of our gem qualities, and we don't want to deteriorate that. And is this a slippery slope? So that's important. Obviously, the what you walked through, the minimum sizes, the closeness to residential, the minimum lot size, the closeness to residential, the SDD layer, understanding that is really, really important. So with that, I will open up to, first I will actually look for the public if there's any comments on the sign-up sheet. Ms. LeBreau, you did not receive any comments, so that we don't have that. And nobody. And so we will start with council questions. Mr. Sweeney already has his hand up.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to follow you and say that it's great to see people on both sides working on this, and it's also great to see us taking something out of COVID too in a positive manner. So I'm glad to see that you guys were able to put this together, and I sure would like to see what we can put together in town. So thank you guys, both Mr. Williams and Mr. Davidoff, for this.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Williams, would you like to, or do you?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So Todd, thanks for the wonderful presentation, for the comments. This is something I think that Leon raised to me after a meeting, and we thought it was a great idea, and we brought it to Mr. Hart, and then Mr. Dumais took over with Mr. Hart, and we had a bunch of meetings with it, and Mr. Hart and Mr. Dumais and Mr. Davidoff did an amazing amount of research in terms of the trends of fast food drive-thrus, how it's almost evolving, as Mr. Dumais reference to taking up less space in terms of, we think of a behemoth McDonald's, and it's more almost like a kitchen now in some instances. So there is an evolution in that regard. And so I really thank them for the tremendous amount of work that they did. And also, the only objection I've ever heard from folks in town about this was what the mayor brought up in terms of this maybe becoming a trend into all areas of the town, and also concerns of it impacting residential neighborhoods. But to Mr. DeMay's point, when he talked about kind of passing this ordinance or approaching this ordinance through a balanced approach, the residential setback combined with the hours of operation, combined with the landscaping piece, and also the zones that it's confined to, I think really is a happy medium of meeting a need that I think the public wants in terms of a drive-through access to restaurants, but also preserving what we all love about West Hartford. So thanks for all your hard work, everyone, and that's my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Davidoff.
Madam Mayor, the town manager just alerted me that there was a letter of support that I did not receive. Could you mention it, please?
Mr. Hart, would you like to share that with us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So we did receive a letter from the two principals of Figure 8 Properties, Bruce and Harris Simons, in support. An email, I can read it if you prefer, or just forward it on to the town clerk for the record. Yep, it is short. I can read it quickly. So from the Simons, drive-through windows have become more important for restaurants, pharmacies, and banks in this environment. For people wishing to limit physical contact, they're also important for both the convenience and safety of the public. A drive-through meets the needs of the handicapped, senior citizens, families, and those with busy schedules. Equally important for some people is the health aspect of providing an alternative for customers and employees wishing to minimize some of the physical contact. As we have recently seen, convenient pickup alternatives are important to the vitality of many of the local restaurants, not only fast food restaurants. A mixture of successful restaurants is certainly important to the image and economic vitality of the town, and coffee shops, bakeries, and other food options are available at drive-through windows. In our opinion, the issue of drive-through facilities should not be one of whether or not to allow them, but where and under what conditions. The drawbacks are almost exclusively traffic-related. Therefore, limiting drive-through facilities to locations where the stacking can be accommodated and where the impact on adjacent roads can be managed through the internal circulation of traffic on the specific site. Rather than prohibiting drive-through windows, regulations should make sure that the stacking of cars does not spill out onto the adjacent streets. This will require sufficient on-site vehicle storage and circulation, separate from the parking. Also, the site layout to achieve the new planning and development aspirations of the town should be considered. And last paragraph, a review of the locations where the necessary accommodations can be made and the establishment of special permit standards of approval will provide the necessary protections while enabling facilities to maximize their potential. Again, this is from Bruce and Harris Simons, principals with Figure 8 Properties on South Main Street in West Hartford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hart. Okay, Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd first like to thank the manager, Mr. Dumais, for their time that was spent to research the ordinance, the trends in the market, especially during COVID. I'd like to also thank my colleague, Mr. Williams, for the hours that he put forward for these meetings to basically flush out the issues. When we first started this, there were several definitions of what we called and considered a drive-through. So we sort of have cleaned that up. There's still more work to be done, and the issue that we didn't address was curbside. curbside pickup. And during COVID, we noticed that businesses needed to pivot because if they were open, they needed a place for their customers to pick up their orders without contact. So they got creative. They had a window, a door. This is where you would conduct your businesses. But as we look through applications for STDs when they come forward now, some of the parking lots where people were queuing up to pick up their orders that they ordered online, people were parking in fire lanes. People were having, all of a sudden, this is just a curbside pickup spot. You can't park here. So that's going to change how we look at zoning applications coming in the future, because I think a lot of these businesses have pivoted to that model and have seen the success to that. They've got numbers. This is, just call us on or text us on your phone. You're in spot 1 or spot A or whatever it is. Bless you. And so that's something we haven't done. So there's more work to be done here. But I was interested in seeing where the TPZ thought of this. And our intention as committee members was not to do harm to our beautiful community, not to suggest that West Hartford was going to become this mecca of drive-through establishments. No, we were basically looking and responding to what we were seeing throughout the nation with respect to, as Mr. Dumais alluded to, Panera, Chipotle, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, Shake Shack, and what their new models are. And if you just do an internet search and you look at these new buildings, with the cost of labor going up, it requires less people on a smaller footprint to generate maybe same amount of square foot sales or possibly more. And that's what these kind of industries are looking at. They're looking at ways that they can return more on their investment and still be competitive. And what we were looking at also was what's convenient for our residents. Many people didn't venture out during COVID, and if they did, they didn't really want to be around a lot of people. So this is a good thing that we've done here. I'll be the first to admit that this is not earth-shaking in terms of an adoption of an ordinance. We've done much more significant work in the 14 years I've been on here. But what this represents is a willingness to look at our existing zoning code and to approach it, in this case, in a bipartisan manner, to have the discussions, to understand the concerns of our community, and try to bring our code of ordinances to be relevant in the times that we live in. And there's nothing worse than having a code of ordinances, especially a zoning code of ordinance, which is outdated and which doesn't meet the needs of our community. So as the Constitution's always called a living document, one would hope that our zoning ordinances on a much smaller and narrower measure would be seen that way too. So that's how we approach the entire thing. I do believe that this change will be viewed in a positive light. It will bring architectural advancements to our community. It will bring creative ideas from developers. And there are people who want to come to West Hartford and use the infill in some of these larger impervious parking lots that we have to have these kind of businesses. They're out there, they're making contacts, and they're looking for communities that are willing to accept them. And we might see some of the ones that are currently in a strip mall say, we probably could get a lot more business if we could find a location in an infill that's in this huge parking lot that no one's parking in. So that's our hope. It was convenience, it was grand list growth, it was smart growth, it was strategic, and we really were cognizant of any detriment that could be done to residential abutters. That was taken into consideration. The hours of operation, noise, pollution, trash, those are all there. But as we notice those that decide to invest in our community want to be responsible commercial entities here. And we constantly go to them and ask them to support our local organizations for any of their fundraising activities. So we need them to be in West Hartford, and we need to show them that we want them to be here. So that was basically the genesis of what we did and what we worked on. While it may not seem like it's a lot, it did take us quite a few meetings to get to where we were and where we are this evening. And I would just want to get all these comments on the record so that everyone understood what the intent is. Because I think that's important, because people will go back and say, well, what was the council thinking? Because I remember my good friend here, Mayor Cantor, was on the council in 2005 when there was an entire discussion of drive-through pharmacies. And I may have been on the zoning board at that time to talk about that as well. And that was a heated discussion. And people were like, let's look at the history, the legislative intent behind when we first allowed banks to come in here and have drive-throughs. So it's very important, because people do rely on what was decided 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So I don't think that drive-through pharmacies have led to the demise of our community. I think they've been very well received, used by, as pointed out, handicapped people, people who are ill, too ill to get out of their car to get whatever they need during a snowstorm or rainstorm, small children. So let's put a positive spin on this. I think that's really, really important. And I think in the end, we'll be all better served. Thank you for allowing me that time.
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. And again, I appreciate both of your work, and obviously the commitment that staff has put in a lot of time to come up with a thoughtful ordinance. Any other questions for the council? Ms. Fay?
Yes. Thank you very much. I was thrilled to see the bipartisan effort that went behind this. I think that is really outstanding. Chris and I have had a chance to speak about it, and so I've got all my questions answered. But I think anything that we can do at this juncture to help our small businesses is really, really critical. I think there's enough controls in the ordinance to make sure that these drive-throughs will be in appropriate locations. Leon, you mentioned already about abutting neighbors. I think that's a good consideration. Drive-throughs are here to stay, and just as you pointed out, they're expanding. And you can go into other towns, you can see these small, littler restaurants and other things that you described, coffee shops that have them. So I think it's good. I think businesses have suffered. And just my last point would be, I always kind of chuckle when I go by the McDonald's that's in Bishop's Corner, and it's probably one of the few that I've seen without a drive-through. And I don't know if that qualifies based on the ordinance, but I suspect it would. And I imagine that they're losing a lot of business because they don't have one. So that was just one observation, but I think anything we can do, COVID's not immediately going away. There will be probably some other things that will come up, and I just think the convenience and a bunch of different reasons. You don't even have to be, handicapped or elderly. You find yourself sometimes in situations with 5 kids and 3 dogs and 2 cats. You can't get out of the car. So I think drive-throughs are a good solution. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. Any Ms. Blanks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment, and thank you for the good work that both Councilor Williams and Deputy Mayor have done. So I'm not going to echo what everybody said, but I mean, fantastic, especially coming out of COVID and, looking at some of the positive things that we can do. But I'm thinking about some of the closures in town, in particular the banks, with the drive-through windows. And if that presents an opportunity for either developers or others who are either looking to lease or buy and to create restaurants. And I was happy to hear you state, Deputy Mayor, that there's still some work to do, because a few of those do abut neighborhoods, I like to call them bedroom neighborhoods. And so my concern is, if there were perhaps application for a restaurant and you have that sort of minimal overflow, just as you started talking about, Councilor Fay, how or perhaps how do we anticipate or envision either controlling that, or how do we look at that going forward? And in particular, I'm thinking of the former Webster Bank on Park Road, and also the Bank of America on New Britain Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blanks. I don't know if Mr. Dumay wants to address it. Thank you.
So I think the ordinance is somewhat flexible, but also tries to direct and control this infill, or in the instances you described, Councilor Banks, what I would consider an adaptive reuse of one of those structures. Off the top of my head, the two locations you listed would not likely be eligible because of the proximity to immediately adjacent residential properties, at least both of those, in both instances to the south, if I can picture the sites right, are immediately adjacent to residential, so they would not be eligible. But there could be other locations that we would call perhaps an adaptive reuse with minimal reconfiguration or reinvestment could be made to work.
Thank you, Ms. You well said, Ms. Blanks. Yeah, so just to follow up on Ms. Fay's question about McDonald's, I am curious because that does have a residential neighborhood immediately behind it. Would that?
So, Madam Mayor, that location, we'd have to get a whole new structure that's pulled out towards the street, and then it would have to be far enough away from that immediately adjacent neighborhood. The parcel is sufficiently sized and zoned to accommodate that, but it would be incumbent upon kind of a new redesign and infill along the street to, create some street presence for that to be made to work.
You're right. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Galt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, thank you for everybody involved. I don't want to reiterate what everybody's already said, but certainly appreciate the efforts from town staff as well as Chris and Leon. Really appreciate it. One question I did have, maybe it's just more technical, was there a consideration for having a sunset clause built into this ordinance, or was that even a thought or consideration?
That, Councilor Gold, that was not a consideration since we already allowed them. This was trying to expand and allow them in different ways, and I'm reminded of Corporation Counsel Dodge's dislike of incorporating sunset clauses in our zoning ordinances. So I think if I brought that to him, he would have not looked favorably upon that.
It's one of the reasons why I brought it up, just to make sure he was on his toes. Thank you.
He's awake. Yes. Any other questions? So I have one. The last item on Section 4 on the ordinance, and I just wanted to clarify a little. It said, Code of the Town of West Hartford entitled Schedule of Permitted Accessories is hereby amended to by deleting permitted accessory use 16, drive-up window counter service as restaurants. My question is, I know there are some models that are opening that are only drive-through, that have no, they have a kitchen, but they don't have seating inside. Would that be allowed in Corbin's Corner and an infill, meets all other requirements? Would a standalone, whether it's Shake Shack or something like that, it wouldn't be a Shake Shack because Shake Shack's there, but have that as their only,
That's a great question, Madam Mayor, and the answer would be potentially yes. If you could design that model to meet all of the other standards, so we're still left with a building that does everything else the code requires. That was one of the reasons by taking it out of as an accessory use and calling it its own new use as a primary use. Because if we look forward, many of the trends seem to indicate that increasingly smaller footprint, and in some instances, a more auto-centric, think of Dunkin' Donuts. I forgot what they're branding their most recent, is it Drive or Dunkin', I don't even know what they're called, but that is a trend that we do see in some of the fast food establishments.
Right, thank you. Okay, that's what I thought. And I went to a Dunkin' and then there was a Starbucks actually somewhere we were that also. So it's obviously what companies are looking at as an opportunity in certain areas. Okay, any other? Okay, so now I've written all over my little cheat sheet here. So no further questions from the council. Before we close the hearing, I want to read into the record letters from TPZ dated September 24th, where they failed to reach a recommendation on the proposed ordinance by a split, as I mentioned, a 2-2 vote. It wasn't rejected, but it wasn't approved. From CROG dated August 27, 2021, finding no apparent conflict with regional plans or policies or the concerns of neighboring towns. My question for Corporation Council is, with TPZ, do we need a supermajority? Not that that will necessarily be an issue, but.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Under the town charter, a supermajority is only required if your action is other than that which was recommended by TPZ, and in this case, TPZ made no recommendation.
Thank you. Okay. All right. If there's no objection, then we will close the public hearing. Seeing no objection. Okay. Public hearing is now closed. And if you don't mind, we will go right into the 7 p.m. and then we will take a break before council if anybody is waiting on their bathroom break or something. Okay. All right. This is the 7 p.m. public hearing. This is calling it to order. Good evening. I'm Mayor Sherry Cantor. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's this public hearing on ordinance extending the moratorium on certain uses not supportive of transit-oriented development. It's kind of funny that they're back to back. Before we begin, I'd like to note that the required legal notice was posted on the town's website and published in the Hartford Current. The ordinance and accompanying materials have been posted and are available for review on the town's website. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Blanks?
Here.
Ms. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Davidoff?
Here.
Ms. Fay?
Here.
Mr. Gold?
Present.
Ms. Kerrigan's absent. Mr. Sweeney?
Here.
Mr. Winograd? And Mr. Williams?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will begin with a presentation by town staff, then we'll go to public comment if there is any, and then we will go to comments by town council, questions and comments. So again, we will start with Mr. Hart and then go to Mr. Dumais.
Thank you, Mayor. So the proposed ordinance that's in front of the council now, as the mayor said, seeks to extend the moratorium that the council has adopted on certain uses not supportive of transit-oriented development until the council either adopts new zoning ordinances regarding this use or January 31st, 2022, whichever occurs earlier. So council will recall the way we've structured the ordinance. It only applies to lots in business or industrial districts within a quarter mile of either the Flatbush or the Elmwood CT Fast Track Station, with frontage on a very limited number of streets. And the area generally corresponds, the way we designed it, to a 5-minute walking zone around each station. And that's considered to be a zone that is suitable for transit-oriented development. The moratorium is designed to provide us with additional time to review and develop the land use regulations to promote transit-oriented development, or TOD. We do plan to present a draft ordinance to the council for your consideration at the next meeting of the Community Planning and Economic Development Commission. So we did, as required, we referred the extension of the moratorium to a few entities. Number one, our Town Plan and Zoning Commission, which did unanimously recommend approval of the extension. And also the Regional Planning Commission of our Capital Region Council of Governments. They also reviewed the extension and they didn't find any conflict with any regional plan or policies. Thank you, Mayor. I'll ask Mr. Dumais if there's anything additional he'd like to add.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Dumais?
I don't have anything additional. I think Mr. Hart hit all of the issues in the head, with one exception. The original moratorium was designed for us to institute some community outreach, which we have done. We have shared that with our CPED group back this summer, and we have that. And as Mr. Hart indicated, we're excited to share a draft with you at your next CPED meeting in October, and then go back out and do a little bit more community outreach with the community and the business associations impacted in these two transit-oriented areas.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. And so I remember when we actually were looking at potentially a 6-month, and a 9-month seemed to be a stretch, considering what our town was going through at the time. So we expect you think before obviously June, but in the 4 to 4 month-ish, sounds like 4 to 5 months kind of time frame. Mr. Hart.
Oh, the extension would take us through the end of January, Mayor, but we'll be presenting the draft ordinance to you next month.
Okay, I see. So the extension will go till, I thought the extension goes to June, whenever we adopt, before, did you say January or June? I thought it said.
January.
Okay, I was gonna say, wait a minute. Okay, very good. That makes sense to me now, because I don't know, I was gonna say, I didn't see June. Okay. All right, are my questions answered? All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, so we look forward to hearing more. I don't think there's any sign up. And Ms. LeBrow didn't see any, okay? And, all right, so, and no questions from the council? Comments, questions? All right, then before we close this public hearing, I'll read into the record. TPZ, as the town manager stated, TPZ dated September 17, 2021, recommending approval, and from CROG dated August 27, 2021, finding no apparent conflict with regional plans or policies or the concerns of neighboring towns. Seeing no objection, we will close the public hearing. Is there any objection? Okay, seeing and hearing none. No objection, hearing is closed, and we will start the council meeting in 15 minutes. See you then. Okay. gallery over here, peanut gallery. Call the meeting to order, September 28th. We're punchy already. That's not good. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, Ms. LeBreau.
Ms. Blanks.
Here.
Ms. Cantor.
Here.
Mr. Davidoff.
Here.
Ms. Fay.
Here.
Mr. Gold.
Here.
Ms. Kerrigan is absent, but we have Mr. Dembo here as an alternate on the zoning application. Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Winograd. And Mr. Williams.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will begin with a proclamation, and this is a general proclamation, but it is very important, and I hope we all participate and share. Whereas the town of West Hartford recognizes and honors contributions of all Hispanic American members of our community, and whereas in 1988, the United States Congress adopted a resolution designating September 15th to October 15th of each year as National Hispanic Heritage Month, and whereas this year's theme invites us to celebrate Hispanic heritage and to reflect on how great our tomorrow can be if we hold onto our resilience and hope. It also encourages us to reflect on all the contributions Hispanics have made in the past and will continue to make in the future. And whereas the now month-long tribute is observed from September 15th to October 15th and commemorates those in the U.S. whose ancestors came from Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Equatorial Guinea, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Puerto Rico, Uruguay, and Venezuela. And whereas the celebration recognizes the positive impact that Hispanic Americans have left on the country, Hispanic Americans bring a rich culture, heritage representing many countries, ethnicities, and religious traditions which contribute to America's future. And whereas the Hispanic community has had a profound influence on our country through their strong commitment to family, faith, hard work, and services, and they have enhanced and shaped our national heritage with centuries-old traditions that reflect the multi-ethnic and multicultural customs of their community. And whereas during National Hispanic Heritage Month, the United States celebrates the culture and traditions of Spanish-speaking residents who trace their roots to Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Equatorial Guinea, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Puerto Rico, Uruguay, and Venezuela. Whereas the town of West Hartford invites all community members to learn more about the rich Hispanic culture, traditions, history, and celebrations and contributions that have been made to our country. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on behalf of the Town Council of West Hartford and residents of West Hartford, I, Mayor Sherry G. Cantor, do hereby proclaim September 15th to October 15th, 2021, Hispanic Heritage Month. And this month, as we recall our hard-fought progress, let us resolve to continue moving forward. Together, let us ensure the laws respect everyone, civil rights apply to everyone. I call upon our residents to learn more about this rich history and to observe this month with appropriate programs and activities. And so I do think the library is doing some things, and I know that there are book recommendations and many other activities coming. So, with that, Mr. Davidoff, number 3.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Without objection, I move approval of the minutes from the Town Council meeting on September 14th, 2021.
Is there any objection?
There's,
I'm sorry, Mr. Gold?
yes, I just wanted to make the record clear that under 7A of the minutes, there appeared to be a typographical error in terms of who voted for what on the TCI bill.
Oh, is there?
Yes. And to clarify, it listed 2 nays as Ms. Fay and Mr. Winograd.
Oh, you're right.
So somebody actually does read the minutes.
Good job. Good job. All right. So so can we amend those minutes and approve as amended?
Mr.
Dodge?
I would move to amend the minutes to reflect that change.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, if
Yes.
Councilor Gold could just clarify what his motion.
Thank you.
Pushing.
The motion would be to amend the minutes. Let me just pull it up here. The minutes under new business 7A, the resolution in support of the Transportation Climate Initiative Program, listed yays, and Councilor Williams was listed under that category. Under the nays, Councilor Winograd was listed under that category. And I would suggest that those are flipped to reflect exactly how the vote went at the last meeting.
Very good catch. All right. And so the motion, the amendment, should we re-vote on that amendment?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay. You're moving the amendment?
Yes.
I heard a second from Mr. Sweeney. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. So the minutes are amended, and now we will move to adopt the amended minutes. So, Mr. Davidoff, if you want to just move the amended.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes as amended from the Town Council meeting on September 14th, 2021.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, the amended minutes are adopted. Okay, and number 4 is public forum. Is there most everything we had was subject to a public hearing, but no, okay, so is nobody signed up to speak? Is there anybody that would like to speak to something that was not the subject of a public hearing on our agenda? Okay, seeing none, and we had no written comments in Ms. LeBreau, correct? For anything not on our, correct, okay. Oh, so we will go to number 5, Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we place items 7A, 11A through 11C, 12A and 12B, 14A through 14C on the consent calendar.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, say yay. Yay. All those opposed? No, there are no opposition and no abstentions, we're correct? Okay, so that passes unanimously. And number 6, Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve the application filed on behalf of Floor Decor, a potential future tenant at 46 Kane Street, to permit facade and site design changes to accommodate a new tenant.
Motion's been made and seconded. This was the subject of a public hearing, and we just had a description. It's very exciting that a new store, a new business is interested in that Prospect Plaza space, and we just went through the facade changes, some changes, green changes on the sides of the building, bordering the building, some exterior changes in the back, and most, probably the biggest change is the drive-up area where people could drive up and collect their beautiful homewares. So, are there any comments? Does anybody want to make comments before we go to roll call? Mrs. Fay.
Thank you, Mayor Cantor. I'm very, very excited to see something go into that location. It's been vacant for actually not too long considering COVID and everything else, but it's a great location and it abuts Hartford, so I would think you'd get a lot of traffic there. I like the plan changes that you put forward, especially the landscaping. And as Mr. Gold suggested, where the wall is, where people could get injured with the fence up there, I think that's a big improvement. I'm looking forward to the store coming. I think we need to do everything in town that we possibly can to support brick and mortar. I know that's a challenge. So I will be supporting this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. Ms. Blanks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also am happy to see this space being occupied, especially since I go by there very often, and a number of the people in the community are always asking, so what's going in that space? How long is that space going to be vacant? I actually, full disclosure, thought it was going to be something else, but I'll take what we have right now. I just think it's going to be a good addition, especially with all the plans that you and your, colleagues have proposed to us this evening. So I too will be supporting it because I think this is long overdue for this particular community, and it's going to be, as Councilor Fay said, you're in a great location to the highway, so easy off and easy on. And also, perhaps you'll be able to provide some jobs for people in the community as well. So we'll be supporting this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blanks. Any other? Mr. Gold.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I do appreciate moving into the neighborhood. I welcome you to the neighborhood as I'm across the street in the Hartford side. I just certainly hope that you keep the graffiti to a minimum on the walls, so that would be appreciated. Thank you, and I'll be in support of this.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Any further comments, questions? I'll just, this is 71,285 square feet, and we saw it in use in our vaccination, our mass vac site. I want to thank the landlords for working with us to extend that and have that available to our residents. That was a big help at the time. We could do it on tile too. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. But I think this is a wonderful addition, and a lot of people are envisioning their homes in many ways besides just their residence. So they are working from home, and the kids are playing at home, and people are investing in their homes. So this is a welcome addition, and I thank you very much. And I appreciate your investment in the town of West Hartford. All right, with that, we will go to a roll call vote. Ms. Lebrow.
Ms. Blanks.
Yes.
Ms. Cantor.
Yes.
Mr. Davidoff.
Yes.
Ms. Fay.
Yes.
Mr. Gold.
Yes.
Ms. Kerrigan's absent. Mr. Dembo.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Mr. Winograd.
Yes.
And Mr. Williams.
Yes.
It's unanimous, 9-0.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Dembo, you are welcome to stay, but if you would like to go, thank you so much for your filling in. Appreciate it very much. All right. Then we will go to B, Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move adoption of an ordinance allowing restaurant drive-through facilities in certain commercial districts.
Motion's been made and seconded. I'm going to start off by thanking Mr. Williams, Mr. Davidoff for leading this charge. We went through it in the public hearing a little bit, but out of discussions about what we need to do to react to COVID in a way, but long-term, I think they both saw a need to update our drive-through capabilities. I actually was making calls to our health department and to the town manager about a drive-through pharmacy situations because of again, testing, drive-up testing, and potentially that existed in other towns that we didn't have. So these things were going on, and it was a really a wonderful, and these two counselors really worked together, and we're very focused on bringing this to us tonight. I want to thank town staff. Todd Dumais spent a lot of time on this. It's hard to change an ordinance and to do something in the way, this is a form zone that Mr. Dumais had explained to us, based really on use and how do we zone for a use, but control and balance that use. I was on the council when we adopted the 2005 Walgreens drive-up window. It was a long discussion, and I will say it changed my life dramatically to the better in many ways. With four young, at the time, I had a few young sons. Now they are not. And it was a really important part of my life. And now with my 93-year-old mother, I see another end to a drive-through benefit. I also have seen the drive-through testing existing and hope that that might be expanded in West Hartford as well. I think this is something that does balance the walkability and the neighborhood connectivity that we value so much and treasure so much in West Hartford. And with, and I'm sure Mr. Davidoff will review some of the details of it, but overall from a balanced perspective, I see great potential, but I also see a great balance in this ordinance. So again, I appreciate the work of you both, the work of town staff on this, Mr. Hart, and of course, Mr. Dumais on the extensive work. And with that, I will go to Mr. Williams. Do you want to go next?
I said what I thought earlier, so I'll be brief. Thanks, Mr. Hart and Mr. Dumais. We had a lot of conversations, and you were always doing a lot of research in between our meetings to advance the ball moving forward. And it was great to work with you, Mr. Davidoff, on this throughout this process. So glad to see that it's likely to pass, and it's a really good reaction to, I think, troubling time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too would echo Mr. Williams, and I'm not a big echoer usually around the table. But Mr. Hart and Mr. Dumais, and also Corporation Counsel's Office for getting us in the proper legal form for this ordinance. I appreciate all of those efforts. And Madam Mayor, I thank you for challenging us to work on things that could improve our community despite the pandemic. It's definitely been a highlight of my tenure to work with somebody on the other side to find common ground for the betterment of our community. And I do cherish the fact that Chris and I did put in significant amount of hours to read the materials. I would constantly send an email with another thing that I just read in some business journal or on CNBC or something like that, and say, well, this could happen here, so let's see if we can make that happen. Madam Mayor, you touched on all the reasons why this is good for our community, and I'll just stop there. And thank you for your leadership and encouraging us to be the best that we can be.
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. Much appreciated. Any other, Mr. Winograd?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to say I did start off somewhat skeptical of the idea for all the reasons I think you cited. Mr. Dumais cited at the beginning, the concerns on the environmental issues with these types of facilities, with not the parking one, or I think traffic issues. I don't think that's a big issue, but certainly the environmental pieces, and frankly the look of them as well. But I want to thank my colleagues for sort of moving me along on this. Staff, I also had a lot of questions that staff was able to address for me offline, and to echo what's been said, the effort to do a nonpartisan agreement, to have that kind of good discussion, and frankly to address a particular, the idea of using it as form. I mean, it is in fact a pedestrian-friendly design. It is one that is not the car culture that I think the stereotype of the drive-throughs have been. And so I appreciate that sort of effort to educate us on the variety of these types of establishments. So I will be supporting this, and again, I thank both Leon and Chris for their work on this and for their persuasion and the innovation for this plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Winograd. Ms. Blanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I don't want to repeat what everyone said, but I just think this is a demonstration of how we can work together. You hear a lot of talk about how come you don't work together and why is it always bickering and fighting, and I think this is a prime example where that doesn't happen and we can work together and we can come out with a positive end result where the entire town benefits from it. So, I mean, just really kudos and congratulations to both of you working on that committee and looking at the end product, especially coming from where we were 18, 19 months ago, and being able to bring something, so important, and also the forward thinking of what these drive-ins can actually result in. So thank you, Councilor Williams and Deputy Mayor Davidoff.
Thank you, Ms. Blanks. Mr. Sweeney.
I just want to make I think the most important point tonight that dinner is both on Mr. Williams and Mr. Davidoff after this. So looking forward to that. Thank you guys and appreciate the work on this.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Gold.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, one concept, as Leanne and Mr. David often mentioned, you know, good leaders make great leaders. And I applaud your efforts in leading our council in helping to drive independent thought, independent thinking, and collaborative thinking, which I think is important here. You know, this concept, I think, will benefit our town in the future, and I think it will serve a lot of purposes, both for seniors, for adolescents, for the environment, all these things. And I think collectively, you know, I also applaud the town staff. Collectively, I think this is the right move moving forward. So thank you both for putting this together, and again, the staff as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Ms. Fay.
I promise I'll be brief, because everything's been said very, very well by everyone around the table. I just think it's a pro-business idea, and we really have to make sure that we support all the businesses that we have. And I think it was you, Mr. Davidoff, who mentioned that this could be an attractor as well as the new business models go forward to have less on the inside for dining space and more for kitchen to accommodate takeouts. We're going to face circumstances time and time again where they're personal with us aging, or, you know, taking care of a lot of kids or whatever it is, that we really do need these facilities. So I'm definitely supportive. And the last thing that I would say is, Chris, this is a great way for you to kind of end your council career, and I'm very proud of you. And it's not over yet, but I'm glad that you took the bull by the horn and did something and worked across the aisle, and I think it produced a great result with the two of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. And I will just close with saying that today's announcement of Ozzie Fudd partnering with Chipotle, this is a new incoming freshman phenom. Chipotle, you know, having that potential for Chipotle and Ozzie Fudd wear will be awesome. So anyway, all right, now we will go to roll call vote. Ms. LeBron.
Ms. Blanks?
Yes.
Ms. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Davidoff?
Yes.
Ms. Fay?
Yes.
Mr. Gold?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Winograd?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams?
Yes.
It is unanimous.
Thank you very much. All right, C, Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move adoption of the ordinance extending the moratorium on certain uses not supportive of transit-oriented development.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Hart, you want to just briefly give an overview on this?
Happy to do that, Mayor. So the ordinance that's in front of the council, it's an extension of an ordinance the council had already approved, setting a moratorium on certain uses not supportive of transit-oriented development. And this extension would run through January 31st of 2022 at the latest, or if the council adopts new ordinances prior to that date, the moratorium would expire then. Council members will recall, but for the audience's benefit, the ordinance applies only to lots in business or industrial districts within 1/4 mile of either the Flatbush or Elmwood fast track stations with frontage on a very limited number of streets. The area generally corresponds to a 5-minute walking zone around each station, which is deemed appropriate for transit-oriented development. And we're seeking this extension in order to so that we can obtain additional time to develop our draft ordinance, which we plan to present to Council Committee next month. And then I would assume once Council Committee is satisfied with it, it will then go to the full council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hart. And with that, there will be also some continued outreach, and obviously there will be a public hearing as well. So on that. So, all right. I think we can go right to, are there any comments or questions? We can go right to roll call, Ms. Sabro.
Ms. Blanks?
Yes.
Ms. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Davidoff?
Yes.
Ms. Fay?
Yes.
Mr. Gold?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Winograd?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams?
Yes.
It is unanimous.
Thank you, Ms. LeBron. All right, now we go to number 8, and that is reports from the town manager. It says reports of the town manager. Okay. Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. I have loaded my report, just pulling it up here. A couple of items I'd like to highlight. First, under the category of council business and upcoming meetings, we have one committee meeting later this week, and that is the finance and administration committee. will meet at 8 a.m. on Thursday the 30th, and that will be a virtual meeting. And then next week on October 6th at 6:30 p.m., that's the usual date and time, Public Safety Committee will meet. That will also be a virtual meeting. And then the next council meeting is on October 12th. Moving on to some staff reports for you. First, from Community Development. We are planning, as of the morning of October 25th, we're going to be pulling down the on-street outdoor dining enclosures in Town Center. It's just a little bit earlier than we removed them last year. We need to remove them at this time in order to give the MDC the opportunity to complete their final pavement and sidewalk restoration work related to their water main installation along Farmington Avenue. So we have communicated this message to the business community. Really want to thank our restaurateurs for another year of a great partnership, another very successful outdoor dining season. So it's been a very neat partnership opportunity between the town and our restaurateurs. Moving on, wanted to touch on paving in the center as well. So the town, we've recently completed resurfacing of the following roads in and around West Hartford Center: Ellsworth, a section of 4 Mile, LaSalle, a section of LaSalle, and Pelham Road. For those of you who drive through that area on a frequent basis like I do, it's a very dramatic improvement. So really want to thank town staff and our contractors for their good work there. In terms of what we have left for paving for the remainder of the season, we're going to be completing the paving of Florence Street and Grove Street by the end of this week, and that's going to wrap up the 2021 paving season. And we will have resurfaced 8.8 miles of road this year, which is consistent with our target and goals. And want to thank the council for your support of our capital improvement program. Moving on to talk about the North Main Street Road Diet. The trial has been in place for a little over a month. The feedback we've received overwhelmingly has been positive. We've received a few concerns regarding improper use of the two-way left turn lanes. So to address that concern, our staff team has created an information flyer, which we are putting out as part of an education effort to inform people of the best way and the proper way to use the two-way left turn lane. A couple of other things I'd like to report on from the fire department. Our community emergency response team, our CERT, they've been doing a lot of good work for us. Want to thank Chief Priest and our Deputy Emergency Management Director, Bob McHugh, for their good work there. But more importantly, thank the members of the team. These are all volunteers who assist us in critical times of critical need. So we are looking to recruit additional volunteers to attend an upcoming 3-part training series that starts on October 16th. Again, CERT has been doing a lot of good work for us. For example, they helped set up the emergency shelter during Tropical Storm Henri. They've been assisting at Unite CT events, and they've been helping out at our flu and COVID vaccination clinics. And speaking of that, moving on to the Health District, our Health District, West Hartford and Bloomfield, we're going to be holding public flu immunization clinics as we do each and every year in the month of October. I don't have news yet on a COVID booster, but as soon as we have that, we'll put that out to the council as well. Members, these are for members of our community who are looking to get their flu shot for this year. No registration required, but please bring your insurance card and license. We're going to be holding clinics on the following dates: Wednesday, October 6th from 10 a.m. to noon at the West Hartford Senior Center on Starkell Road. Tuesday, October 12th from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. here in the Town Hall auditorium. And that is for anyone over the age of 4. And then Thursday, October 14th from 10 a.m. to noon at the Elmwood Community Center. So we've tried to schedule these at different times and at different locations across town. Moving on, just a couple of additional things I'd like to touch on from the town clerk's office. Very pleased to announce, and this is in recognition of the great work on the part of town clerk's office and WHCI, the town's West Hartford Votes 2020, what you need to know about absentee ballots and voting in person. That video is a finalist for the instructional and training category for the Alliance for Community Media Northeast Region. So congratulations to our town clerk, Ms. LeBreau, our registrars of voters, Beth Kyle and Beth Sweeney, and our WHCI Executive Director, Jennifer Evans. So because of this video, we think, because it was so well done, there were very few errors made by our voters, and we're looking forward to hearing more about the awards ceremony. And then last but certainly not least, want to touch on the Community Job and Resource Fair. The town, in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, another great partnership with the Chamber, we're going to be holding a Community Job and Resource Fair tomorrow, September 29th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. here in the Town Hall Auditorium. The event is open to the public and it is free. It's free for employers and job seekers. So those were the items. Oh, one last thing, Mayor, that I did not write up. Very pleased to report on the fact that we have closed on the purchase of 100 Mayflower Street, the former St. Bridget School, in which we, the council, would really want to thank you for your support. Would like to thank Corporation Counsel's Office, in particular Deputy Corporation Counsel Gina Verano for her excellent work on the closing. Our Director of Plant and Facilities, Bob Palmer, was also very, very helpful, as were Helen Rubino Turco and Carol Waxman. So we're really looking forward to getting going with the larger project. We have a proposal that we will be bringing to the Town Council's Human and Community Services Committee regarding next steps for the project, and we'll bring that to the committee at its next meeting in October. That completes my report, Mayor. Happy to take any questions council members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Questions for Town Manager? Ms. Blanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Hart, I'm just wondering, in terms of the flu immunization clinics, is there a consideration given to perhaps weekend distribution, if you will, perhaps like a 9 to 12? Because I'm looking at these are all during the week, and I'm thinking about those folks who work during these hours.
Thank you, Ms. Blanks. Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Councilor Blanks. I'd be happy to take that suggestion to the Health District and see what we can do in that regard. I appreciate the point.
Thank you, Ms. Blanks. Mr. Gold?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Relative to the road diet, is there additional data that you can supply to the council in terms of the traffic flow and the amount of cars, all of that going forward, so that we can keep an eye on what's happening and whether or not it's actually serving its purpose?
I don't have that data with me this evening, Councilor, but we would plan to keep the council informed through the Community Planning and Economic Development Committee. So we are tracking all that data, as you know, and we'll provide you with feedback at your next meeting and then upon conclusion of the trial as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Any other? And just follow up on the expanded outdoor dining closures October 25th. We will be working on a permanent codification of an approval process for that because, correct, we are doing that now. Right. So just want to make sure that people understand that this isn't going to go away and then it's over. It's something we will be building in for the future. And then I also wanted to mention at the 100 Mayflower, there is a relocated food share site, which is a wonderful, yes, Mr. Hart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In response to both of your points, yes, the road diet, this is a trial, but we're going to evaluate it, and the hope is that it would become permanent. Again, we'll work all that through council committee, and then secondly, the food share the mobile food share location that we had at the Faxon Library branch, and really want to thank the leadership of the Faxon Library, Carol Waxman, and others that we had temporarily located at that site. During the summer months, we have now moved to the 100 Mayflower Street location.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, I actually was referring to the closures of the extended outdoor dining that was going to be something that we were working on for a permanent codification.
My
on the
apologies.
process.
Yes,
That's
we are
right.
doing that as well.
Yes, okay.
And it would go to the same committee.
Yeah, okay, very good. All right, anything yes, Ms. Fay.
Thank you, Mayor. Just, Mr. Hart, real quick, I remember when this first came up, and again, I love the dining out there. It's great. It's been a fabulous success. I'm sure the businesses, at least the ones I've talked to, are very happy with it. At one point, we considered bringing that to other parts of town. Was that something we'd still like to pursue, or are they not appropriate, or have we done the analysis? Do you know? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. Mr. Hart?
Thank you, Councilor Fay, for your question. Yes, the outdoor dining permit system applies town-wide, and we work with restaurants across town. Many areas do not have the sidewalk width or the on-street parking spaces, which is probably more of the limitation that we could devote to outdoor dining. So here in the center and in Blueback Square, we have an opportunity where we can convert some of the public right-of-way, particularly on-street spaces, for that activity. We have seen some of that to a more limited extent in private shopping plazas across town. But yes, we do a pretty comprehensive outreach to restaurants across the community, working through the Business Association and others.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. And thank you, Mr. Hart. Anything further? Okay. Announcements. The 22nd Annual Park Road Parade is back. So it was on hold last year, and this 1-hour parade steps off at 10:30 at Ringgold Street and ends at South Quaker Lane. Hometown heroes who kept us safe, learning, and in business during the pandemic will serve as the Grand Marshal. That's the biggest Grand Marshal. The parade features bands, dancers, floats, dogs of all shapes and sizes, antique cars, color guards, businesses, civic and cultural organizations, and town and state officials. So please join us, hopefully October 2nd at 10:30, and hopefully the weather will be wonderful. Fall into Blueback Market, October 10th. Join us for the first Fall into Blueback Market, 10 to 5 p.m. Spend the day at our seasonal artisan market, shopping dozens of local vendors. Enjoy live music and entertainment for the whole family. There's something for everyone, from hand-poured candles to locally grown bouquets and more. Visit us on Facebook or at the website, which is bluebacksquare.com event. It's a little longer than that, but I bet you get there. For more information and a complete list of vendors. Japan Fall Festival is October 17th from 3 to 5 p.m. This is a free celebration at Blueback Square, and the main event features the powerful taiko drumming performance by So Dako of New York. Traditional lion dancing, balloon folklore, and a koto performance are also featured. Japanese crafts and items will be available for purchase. And I saw, and I'm not sure I'm saying it right, but I saw a taiko drumming performance in February of 2020 before we came back and didn't travel for a long time. And it is amazing. So I will say, if you can go, go. Playhouse and Park Comedy Night Series begins October 30th. And join us for 90 minutes of laughs at 8 p.m. Coleman Green is scheduled to headline, and with a feature by Crystal Dyer. Tickets are $15. All seats are reserved. The season continues on January 8th, April 2nd, April 30th, and June 18th. Please call the box office at Playhouse at 860-523-5900 or visit the website Playhouse on Park, located at 244 Park Road. I also want to give a shout out to the CERT team for their incredible work. Really, people have stepped up and really made a community a safer and serving each other. It's a remarkable. The job fair I had on my list also, I just want to say, I made a note of it, but this is really important. There's a lot of people that are looking for employees, and then obviously there's a lot of employees looking for the right employer. So I encourage you to go tomorrow. And I just want to give a shout out. I didn't thank you enough, Gina, Deputy Corporation Counsel, for your help on the ordinance and the work that you did during the council meeting. So, and congratulations to our town clerk and WHCI on their award. It was a lot of hard work, and I know SE worked so hard on that. All right. With that, we go back to number 10. Reports for Corporation Counsel, Mr. Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I would also like to commend the team that worked on 100 Mayflower, in particular, Deputy Corporation Counsel Verano. I do want to point out, I think my office has seen over the last few years probably a higher number than average of real estate transactions that the town has been involved in. And Attorney Verano has an expertise in real estate law and transactions, and really by in-housing a lot of the work where we would have typically hired outside counsel to handle some of that, we've been able to achieve significant cost savings for the town. I'm not sure if there's a way to quantify that. Maybe we'll try. But in any event, it's really been an asset to have Attorney Verano helping us out on that and to not have to use outside counsel for many of these transactions. Madam Mayor, the Governor a few days ago announced his intent to extend his civil preparedness and public health emergency. The State House of Representatives yesterday and then today the State Senate approved his renewal of the civil preparedness and public health emergency through February 15th. Along with that, the governor earlier this evening issued a new executive order which extends a number of his previous executive orders, most relevant of which probably for the folks at this table is his order allowing the municipalities to impose a local universal mask mandate. Under the governor's new executive order, those orders will automatically be extended. They don't require any further action unless they had an expiration date. Ours did not have an expiration date, and so our mask mandate will continue until the town manager is the CEO of the town chooses to repeal it, I guess. But I'm happy to answer any other questions, Madam Mayor, and I'm also pleased to report that we will not require an executive session this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. That's good news. And I appreciate all your comments and your updates. Any questions for Corporation Counsel? Okay, seeing none, we go to number 13, Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move adoption of the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say yay.
Yay.
Yay. All those opposed say nay. Okay, no opposed, no abstentions. And I think that's it. No petitions, no executive orders. Mr. Davidoff?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Without objection, I move adjournment.
Second.
Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned, and thank you again, Ms. Farano, for all that you do.